This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamit.doitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
As we welcome our viewers to This Week in Richmond, we have a very special welcome back to Senator Tim Kaine. The last time we had this conversation here in the studio was about 4 years ago as you were wrapping up your time serving as Virginia's 70th governor.
It doesn't seem like 4 years ago.
No, time has really flown. But we want to talk not about the past, but about the present and about the fact that in the U.S. Senate that you're on the Foreign Relations Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Budget Committee, three great committees for a freshman to be on the first term.
Very fortunate and sometimes, taxed to my last neuron in terms of being able to tackle those committees well. But we're doing meaningful work on all of them, and I'm really, with frustrations, there are frustrations every day. I've really enjoyed my first year.
When we had our last conversation 4 years in this setting 4 years ago, I think we were reflecting back some on pre-K.
Yeah.
So I thought that would be a great subject to start on now, particularly with, I love the name of the act, Strong Start for America's Children's Act that you've introduced. So tell our viewers about what you're doing on pre-K and then other subjects that we'll move into.
Absolutely, David. Well, I try to kind of divide my Senate work into three categories: active legislative activity, and I'll talk about pre-K, strong travel around Virginia and interaction with Virginians, and then finally efforts every day to build bipartisanship in the Senate. On the legislative side, you know that I've had a long-standing interest in educational issues, especially two areas: early childhood education and career and technical education. So when I was governor, even though we were having to reduce the size of the state budget dramatically, we did significantly expand early childhood education around the state. About 40% more kids, thousands more in pre-K classrooms when I left the governor's office than when I started. And we have a bill now to dramatically accelerate high-quality early childhood education for 4-year-olds across the country. And that is what this act is, and it's a bipartisan effort starting in the Senate. I'm really excited to be part of it.
Well, you speak of being bipartisan. One of the things that we hear about you from in Richmond and around the state is that everything that you're introducing in the Senate, you seek out a Republican to join you as a patron on the bill.
I do. First, I'm no dummy. It's easier to pass. If you can get support on both sides of the aisle, it's easier to get something passed, and especially if it has to go to the House, a Republican majority body, it gets easy over there. But even more than that, David, my feeling about the dysfunction in Washington, and it is dysfunctional, and that's a frustration, is even more than ideological difference. It's the absence of communication and relationships that is creating difficulties. And if you can work, cooperation is a muscle. So you either exercise it and it gets stronger, or you don't exercise it and it gets weaker. So if every bill I put in I can find bipartisan co-sponsors, if on my committees I work closely with folks across the aisle, if in my social activities there I try to bring people together, then I feel like I'm trying to do my part to help the body be stronger. I just am back from a weekend where Senator McCain and I led a delegation to an international security conference in Halifax, Canada, with defense ministers and secretaries of state from around the world, largely our NATO allies. But the fact that he and I are working together on that, or working together on an effort to revise the War Powers Resolution of 1973, we just need to do more to build bridges, and that's what I'm trying to do.
One of the hottest parts of the world has got to be over in the Mideast,
Yes.
Iran. And of course, we're having this conversation on a Monday. Viewers will be seeing it this weekend. But even today, as we're talking, it's really a hot subject about what may be on the verge of working out.
Yeah.
What from your leadership and Foreign Relations Committee, tell our viewers some about this issue with Iran.
I will, David. So, I mean, I'm sort of blessed, but maybe slightly cursed, in that on the Foreign Relations Committee, I am the chairman of what's called the Committee on the Near East, South, and Central Asia, which is the entire Middle East. It's Morocco to Bangladesh. I call it Bangladesh to Marrakesh. And it includes these difficult issues of Libya and Egypt, of Israel, Palestine, of Iran, of Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and Syria, the very difficult issue. So, of course, over the weekend, as Senator McCain and I were together with defense officials from around the world, there was the announcement that the 6 countries, the United States, Germany, UK, France, China, Russia, had worked with Iran on the opening phase of a disarmament, hopefully a disarmament deal, to stop Iran from ever getting nuclear weapons. Iran can't get nuclear weapons. They can't get nuclear weapons because it would pose an existential threat to Israel, one of our closest allies, but also because it would accelerate an arms race in the region where Saudi Arabia and Turkey, and maybe Egypt, would feel like they would need to get nuclear weapons as well. So this opening deal that was announced over the weekend basically has a couple of components to it. It takes the current status of enriched uranium, enriched to the 20% level, which means that it's near weapons grade capacity, and requires Iran to destroy that, basically, to cap any other enrichment at 5%, to disable a lot of the technology that could be used to enrich uranium. But the piece that I like the best, because it's the piece that I think is the most important, dramatically increasing the international inspections in Iran. So what it basically does is it lengthens the time to which they'd have to invest to get to weapons grade uranium, lengthens that time, and by giving more significant inspections, gives the world a better early warning system to determine when they might make a dash toward nuclear weaponry. Now, this is all part of a phased deal, because the ultimate deal has to be a complete guarantee that Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons. We're keeping the entire sanctions regime against Iran in place, allowing them to withdraw some monies that have been escrowed and held back from them based upon past oil sales. Probably a total financial package of about $8 billion over the next 6 months. But we're keeping all the architecture in place, so even the nations they sell oil to, there's about 6, they can't get the dollars for it right now. The dollars go into escrowed accounts that they don't have access to. But big picture, there's a lot of more trust building to do. We need to, obviously diplomacy is preferable to war, preferably to using a military option, but we need to use any option we can to keep them from getting nuclear weapons, and this inspections regime will enable us to really test their sincerity on this. Very controversial. I spent a good bit of time last week with the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Ron Dermer. This weekend in Halifax, I was meeting with the Israeli Defense Minister Yalon, hearing their perspectives on it. They have significant concerns, as they should. And we need to, as we work forward during negotiating the larger package, the larger disarmament package, we need to take those very seriously.
The challenge that I could see down the road may be in the House of Representatives, and with their even passing more stringent sanctions or wanting to move forward in that direction, that's going to be a challenge, isn't it?
It will be. The president has the ability, together with the UN, to put this kind of a regime interim deal into place. But that isn't to say Congress doesn't need to pass a law saying you can do it. But Congress could pass a law saying we want to do something different. And I'm sure when we get back after this Thanksgiving recess, we will be talking about it. My hope would be that we would discuss a sanctions package that would here are additional sanctions against Iran, because the sanctions are working. That's why, one of the reasons why Iran's
Right.
at the table. Here are additional sanctions we'll put in place if we reach the end of the interim period and you haven't agreed to a total disarmament package, or if during the interim period you do not in good faith live up to the obligations of this interim agreement, then the sanctions ratchet up. But I hope while we're in this good faith negotiation period, we do truly test the sincerity of Iran's diplomatic offerings, because for the entire world, and especially for Israel, a diplomatic solution to this significant challenge is far preferable to a military solution.
And I think that would be something that everyone would agree on, hopefully.
Yes. Yeah, no, we do. I think everyone agrees on that, and there are some natural differences on tactically what is the best way to get to that solution. But again, my read in the first few days is this is a proposal that makes it harder for Iran to get to a nuclear weapon, would take longer, and gives us a better early warning system. We already have good intelligence, but intelligence plus daily inspections will give us a better early warning system to determine if their intent suddenly is to sprint toward weapons-grade uranium or plutonium.
Well, I for one think that this is some good Thanksgiving news. And if we went from this news to talking about something yet to be worked out, I know that sequestration has been troubling.
Yes.
Your involvement with the Armed Services Committee and concern about the defense work. If you would move to that subject and give our viewers an update about how you see things moving on this and on the budget work that you all have before you.
You're now asking me a question about my other two committees.
Yes.
So, Armed Services and Budget. When I was elected to the Senate and put on the Budget Committee, the Senate hadn't done a budget in 4 years. Right. And there hadn't been a budget conference in a divided Congress since 1986, a successful budget conference. So it's been a long time since there's been a divided Congress that's been able to come up with a budget deal. Good news is this: the Senate passed a budget in March, so 75 days after I came to the Senate, we had passed our first budget in 4 years, and I worked very hard on that. For a variety of reasons, we haven't been able to get to the conference table with the House, but one of the deal points after the shutdown, which was so needless and foolish, was let's sit at the conference table and negotiate a budget conference. We're in the midst of that right now. We've been given a deadline of come up with a conference budget deal by the 13th of December. And my goal, David, very strongly is that out of a budget conference, we should be able to find a path forward that replaces or restructures the sequester, which in my view really harms defense, harms our economy, harms other important priorities. But just to focus on defense, so you asked about that. The sequester is grounding a third of our air combat wings globally at a time when the world isn't getting more safe, it's more challenging. The sequester is keeping carriers at home when we really ought to have them positioned in hot spots in the world to be able to respond if need be. And the sequester is built in a sort of a cascading downward, so every year you've absorbed all these cuts and then there are more cuts on top of it. So my hope is, and what I'm advocating as part of the budget conference, and it's great to be a budget conferee as a freshman, and Mark Warner is a conferee as well, we're on it together. Right. It's great to be there, and what I'm advocating is we need to replace as much of the sequester as we can, and that which we can't replace, we should restructure. Restructure so that instead of across-the-board cuts, that cut things that are okay to cut, but also cut things that shouldn't be cut. Like nobody thinks we're spending enough money on cybersecurity now. Why would we cut investments in cybersecurity? We should restructure the sequester so that it's more about targeted cuts, the kinds of things that I had to do when I was governor, cutting budgets. I didn't do across-the-board cuts. I went line item by line item and cut some things a little, cut some things a lot. Other things I didn't cut at all. You have to do it based on a strategic judgment, and in nowhere is that more important than dealing with our defense issues. So it's too early for me to tell you, are we going to get there? I have an optimistic sense that just like we passed a budget for the first time in 4 years, we'll be able to do a budget conference in a divided Congress for the first time in 27 years. But we have a couple more weeks of work to do to get to that point.
And on armed forces, I know real concern and work you've been doing, some leadership on veterans issues and veterans unemployment. That was an issue that you were concerned about when you were here as governor.
I was, and what a great issue when I was governor. So bipartisan. The work that we did, I was cutting state government dramatically. I'm the only governor in modern history that left office with a smaller budget than when I started. But there were areas of state government that grew when I was governor, and the Department of Veterans Services was one. Working together with Republican colleagues, we wanted to make sure that the 900,000 veterans in the state had access to the full range of services to which they were already entitled. One of the areas I'm most concerned about is the veterans' unemployment rate. If you are a Iraq or Afghan era veteran, and especially an enlisted person, officers have a little bit easier time, they have college degrees, but if you're an enlisted person, you have an unemployment rate that's about 3 points higher than the national average. Now, some of that is medical and mental health issues, and so we have to have a strong VA system. But I'm convinced, David, that some of it is also the fact that the civilian workforce does not understand what veterans bring to the table. A civilian workforce will say, patriotically, we appreciate you for serving, but they don't know the leadership skills and they don't know the technical training that veterans bring, because now only 1% of adults serve in the military. So it used to be back in the day when there was a draft, you could go in and say, I was a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps, I was an E5 in the Navy, and somebody that was in the hiring office would sort of have an understanding of what you did. That's no longer the case. And so I'm not on the Veterans Committee, but what I've decided to do is the best way that I can tackle veterans' unemployment issues is when folks are in active duty, before they become a veteran, let's do everything we can to make sure that we're not only training them for their military mission, but we're equipping them with the most equivalent civilian credential that can go in their personnel file so that when they do leave the military, they're ready to go with a kind of a resume that a civilian workforce understands. Just to give you an example right here in the neighborhood, Fort Lee is a great logistical command. They train ordnance officers and enlisted, they train chefs, they train transportation and logistics experts. The commander there has done a very good job of saying, you know what, everything we train, there's a civilian equivalent. And if we're training people in welding as part of their ordnance training, give them the American Welding Society certificate as well as let them pass the military test. And you make them better welders when they're in the military, better iron workers when they're in the military, but you also equip them with something that will make it easier for them to get a job when they get out. The chefs who get trained to be the military cooks at Fort Lee and all the service branches, they not only get their military certifications, they get Culinary Institute of America certifications for their training, so that if they leave and they want to stay in food service, they have a credential that any restaurant, any hotel immediately understands. That needs to be the norm for everybody in military life, that when they get a skill, they get the civilian credential, and whenever they decide to leave the military, they can have something that the civilian workforce will desire.
Just last week I was hearing from Senator Walter Stosh, with whom you worked.
Very closely. I like Walter a lot.
That one of the companies that works on getting jobs was working on setting up a system where they could interpret what was the military experience to be what civilian jobs, and so that some of them don't translate as easily as a cook or something like that. That they'd be able to say, okay, if you did this, then you have the skills to do this kind of job. And it looks like with the civilian side helping out on this, that it ought to work.
We ought to be able to make it work. I mean, here's been a problem. It's a little bit of a cultural problem within the DOD and the Pentagon that you'll understand as soon as I mention it. It has not been in their interest necessarily to better equip their people to more easily leave and get civilian jobs.
I understand.
First, their core mission is make sure they're good warfighters.
Yes.
But secondly, if I better equip you to be able to get a civilian job more quickly, will you leave earlier?
Yes.
And so there's been a little bit of a reluctance. But as I've dealt with Secretary Hagel, General Dempsey, the head of the Joint Chiefs, and others, I've made this argument to them. In a tough time, if you would be known as a place where anybody who comes in is going to get skills that will translate into civilian work success, you will always be able to recruit the best and the brightest. There would not be a more powerful recruiting tool than that. And they're starting to, come to the realization that actually is a powerful argument. The Army has a program now called Soldier for Life, where they basically say, you don't stop being Army when you leave active service. We have you have an obligation to your society, but we also have an obligation to you once you join the Army for the rest of your life, even after your active duty. And they've started to understand that equipping people with skills to succeed in the civilian workforce is important, because if we invest in an infantryman, whatever service branch, any billet, we invest in that, we as a society can benefit for that forever in the leadership skill that somebody brings back to the private sector, or to their work on a local school board, or in a philanthropy or charity or church, parish council. There are leadership skills that will benefit the entire society, and we ought to be taking advantage of those.
We're going to put up on the screen your website,
Please,
the Facebook page, Twitter, and other ways people can contact you. Make sure we get that. And I would encourage them as they go on your website, even as I did, and searching out information. I love the way the commentary starts when it's talking about Tim Kaine. And I've got to read a couple of sentences to our viewers. It's there. It says, Tim Kaine has served people throughout his adult life as a missionary, fair housing attorney, teacher, and elected official. He ran for the United States Senate because Virginia needs optimistic doers who know how to find common ground. And then it goes on to lay out your
committees,
biography and your information. But it's such a great starting statement.
Well, thank you, David.
And we in Virginia certainly are proud of our senators, both, and proud of you as the junior senator.
I'm reminded of that by Mark Warner every time I see him.
And
David, it's a tremendous honor to do this job. And look, there's plenty of areas where every day somebody will disagree with me. And that's as it should be. But I have a great dialogue, 6 statewide offices all over the state, good web page, access by phone. I have a superb staff who really know how to tackle constituent problems and solve them. And that's the third part of the job, being active in the state. It's bipartisanship and it's legislative policy, but being active in the state is also very important. I continue to live in Richmond because it's easier from Richmond to get everywhere else. But we're active all over the Commonwealth, and we try to be very aggressive about it.
Well, and people can go on the website and they'll find out where the other offices are located, because the constituent services are really significant.
Manassas, Richmond, Virginia Beach, Roanoke, Danville, and Norton. I can just do them
that. All the way out to Norton. Far southwest.
Yeah.
But before our last 3 or 4 minutes expire, there may be something else that you said, David hadn't asked me about this. So something else that you'd like to tell our viewers.
You've kind of hit it. A lot of your work really does revolve around your committee. So on armed services, I'm working on veterans unemployment, always working to keep America safe. And also John McCain and I are working on looking at the War Powers Resolution in 1973, and if we can do a better job of clarifying the relationship between President and Congress in that very tough question about when we should initiate military action. On foreign relations, I chair the Committee on the Mideast, but I'm also deeply involved in issues about the Americas because of my missionary experience in Honduras and my fluency in Spanish. I stay pretty engaged in Latin American issues. And then on budget, look, probably the biggest weakness in Congress right now, or it might be the biggest manifestation of the weakness, is our budgetary dysfunction. If we can get a budget deal, it might not be everything we would ultimately want, but if it's a step back toward normal budgets, not gimmicks, but normal budgets, then we will build on that to tackling some of these long-term deficit challenges that we have. And I think we can do that. So this budget, the next couple weeks, that's going to be the thing that occupies me the most, is working on this budget deal. But I love the job, frustrations every day, but that was the case before I was in politics, when I was in law practice. There's always things you like, and there's always frustrations, and you just have to always try to look at those areas of weakness and figure out how to help improve them.
Something that may not be on your website, but we have heard about it, is your prowess in spelling. And so I must ask you, do you have to go back and defend that title next year?
Thank goodness I don't. So there was a national spelling bee 100 years ago in 1913, Congress people against journalists, and they decided to reprise it. They'd only held it once in 1913. They decided to do it again in 2013. A dozen journalists, a dozen members of Congress, and I ended up claiming the trophy with the correct spelling of the word nonpareil. I didn't know exactly how to pronounce it, and I wasn't exactly sure what it meant, but I knew how to spell it. So I ended up walking away with the prize.
Yeah. So the good news is you don't have to go back.
I do not.
It's not next year.
I've taken enough grief about what a nerd I must be to be able to win a spelling bee.
You will have that title for the 100 years until they do it for your successors later.
I hope that's the case.
Senator Tim Kaine, thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond.
You bet.
And for the work that you're doing on behalf of all of us. And we thank you very much, and keep up the good work.
David, it's always good to come talk.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamit.doitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.